Mario Kart Wii is nothing if not a game of inches, where in any given race, the slightest of time losses or gains can end up being the difference between winning and losing. Despite this, many of the optimal strategies for when you're shrunk by the shock remain largely unknown. A lot of them certainly were to me, at least. So in this video, I've done my best to compile all the shortcuts that require extra effort, and all the places that should just be driven differently when lightning strikes. One of the most obvious differences that comes with being shocked is that your vehicle is more maneuverable, which changes how you're able to approach certain turns. It's pretty widely known, for instance, that you can easily take the shortcut on DK Mountain at full speed. Not so widely known is that you can do something similar on the other high-altitude DK track. At the single cut, you can avoid driving all the way to the fence by simply starting wide, then cutting in tight, saving nearly half a second. And by the way, this star icon marks the strategies that I think are overall best for online, while the ghost marks the POV that the others are racing against. So if you just want to know what's actually useful, focus on the stars. I tested out what's best after the single cut as well, and found that theoretically it's to enter the zipper right at the start, but only if executed well with minimal airtime, so I'd call it down to personal preference. In fact, as best I could tell, the early zipper entry can actually save more time at normal size, with the caveat that it's harder to get that minimal airtime at higher speeds. Of course, better than any of that is to take tiny double, which with TF input isn't that much harder than the regular double in my opinion. It mostly just takes some getting used to going lighter on the brakes before the first chasm, plus the angle of approach being a bit less forgiving. But if you aim for that steepest part of the slope and snap from left to right as you go airborne, I think anyone can get it down. Another popular place to make use of the increased agility of being shrunk is at the shroomless mud cut on Waluigi Stadium. This one's pretty much a no-brainer if you're in a high spot, even if you need an item. On the previous turn, you can also take advantage of tiny maneuverability by tricking off the big flip ramp while still taking a tight line. And it probably comes as no surprise that all of the trickable dirt mounds on the track become worth tricking as well. These, I think, primarily because your slower speed causes them not to send you as high as normal. This similarly makes it slightly faster to take the second of the two wooden ramps on KC. Funnily enough, the very next ramp on KC also becomes more worth tricking when small, but this one for a different reason. Normally, a wheelie plus the boost from the stream brings you just a few units shy of the 120 km/h speed cap here. So tricking saves just a hair by removing the need to rehop. But if you're shocked, you aren't going to run into the speed cap here, so the trick boost and the current boost can fully stack together. Still not a huge time save, but more than usual. In the same vein, after the giant red shell, you normally hold out a mini turbo all the way to the bottom of the waterfall, because at this point the current is so fast that you'll be going about 120 regardless of other boosts. But this isn't the case when shrunk, so it's instead best to get to full wheelie speed as soon as possible, like any other typical turn. Detaching from the waterfall also becomes more feasible, saving a further couple tenths of a second if you can pull it off. After KC, the next fastest type of moving road are the escalators of Coconut Mall, so it isn't too surprising that their optimal strategy changes too. Just like on KC, the huge boost provided by the moving road severely limits any other boosts at normal size, but not at shrunken size. Consequently, at either of the two pairs of escalators, if the right one is going up, then tricking onto the banister is entirely useless. If it's the left one going up, then the banister strat returns to being a reasonable option, but still decidedly slower than a low trick onto the upward escalator, and only breaking even, roughly, with simply drifting up the left escalator. And this all applies essentially the same to both of the two sets of escalators. I was also curious about the infi tricks, and it turns out they save about the same amount small. But better still, you can do the first infi and then take the boost panel to get the best of both worlds. Moving road isn't the only place that the speed cap imposes itself at regular size, but not at shrunken size. On boost panels, notably, the speed cap makes it that wheelies don't do a whole lot normally, but when tiny, they matter just as much as ever. The last turn of Yoshi Falls is one place where this difference takes effect. It becomes optimal to wheelie right away when tiny. The real surprise here for me was that skipping the last boost panel also turned out to be faster. And it's a similar story on the last turn of GV2, with a wheelie into a low trick becoming the fastest approach. While we're on GV2, here's everything you need to know about doing the shortcut tiny. There are 3 methods you can use. The technically simplest is to charge an MT and release it shortly before the ramp, but I personally find it less awkward to use TF input instead. The third approach is to simply hop trick, which I believe is fully consistent so long as you're not wheeling when you reach the ramp. Hop tricking comes with the advantage of requiring no prior setup, meaning even if you're inches from getting TS'd, you can charge an SSMT and make it over. In fact, if you're within a bike length or so of this line of planks, SSMT speed alone is enough to get you across without hopping. And the cut does always save a significant chunk of time, even in its worst case scenario, so it's well worth knowing how to do it in different circumstances, I think. Another fairly easy tiny shortcut to learn is the dock cut on Delfino. All you really need to change compared to normal is to angle yourself closer to perpendicular to the ramp. And once airborne, leaning all the way back can also help with rotating your bike into a better line. Like GV2, this cut can be done with an SSMT as well. Though if the boost runs out before the grass, your angle has to be quite precise. An alternate method is to go way over to the left, mini turbo through the grass, and hop trick off the ramp. This is slower and, in my opinion, a bit trickier than the regular way, but it could nevertheless have some utility if, say, the ramp was blocked by an item. Perhaps the single most common way that the shock alters what's optimal is through fixed speed collision types, because though their speed is fixed, your base speed very much isn't, so the changes in speed are drastically different. Most notably, flip ramps become way more valuable, making several of the more out-of-the-way ones actually worth taking, including the one behind the rock on Sherbetland, the one after the last gray platform on GV, this ginormous ramp after the cannon on DKS, the ones in the mogul section of DKS, though they're only really faster than a strong set of mogul tricks if you get low air off them. Still, for consistency, not to mention the item boxes, I think they're worth taking regardless. The left path at the end of Goldmine, this one was probably pretty obvious. And the 2 back-to-back flip ramps at the end of DDR. As a side note, it turns out that even at normal size, tricking off only the first ramp is faster than tricking off only the second, if done right, which certainly came as a surprise to me. And one last thing on DDR, you can actually do a smaller version of the sand hop while shocked. The easiest way I could find was to start wide and spin hop right to left immediately after releasing the MT. But there's definitely still a learning curve. The angle you approach at feels pretty weird at first. It saves a good half second though, if you can get it down. Returning to flip ramps, their fixed speed enables BCWii glitch to be possible tiny as well. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any real consistency to it. But it's even possible shroomless, at least with Daisy, so maybe someone savvier than me could figure it out. On the TS ramp, by the way, just tricking is still slower, but all you need is a drift trick to make it faster when shrunk. Moving on now to the second fastest fixed speed type, the bouncy mushrooms of MG, which go from slower than drift speed to faster than wheelie speed. So the objective completely flips from minimizing mushroom airtime to maximizing it. This includes taking the left path in the cave, as the right requires a risky green mushroom skip just to essentially break even, with one fewer item set to boot. Another way to spend more time at the mushroom speedlock is to take the Nintendo intended shortcut. Normally, doing this cut shroomless is practically useless, besides maybe to dodge a red. When shocked, on the other hand, it saves close to a second, albeit at the cost of missing the first item set. But doing the cut tiny isn't too difficult either. I've found that if I start a drift just past this flower, aim a little to the right of this tall green mushroom stalk, then hop right and TF off the mushroom, it's surprisingly consistent. Finally, the wallride can be taken more or less the same as at normal size. Handy if you aren't resizing in time for the regular gap jump. Even the shroomless version is possible, though I very much doubt there's any remotely reliable setup for it. Last of the fixed speed types are the slow ramps found on a couple of the retro tracks. With the ones on Shy Guy Beach, it becomes optimal not to low trick, since doing so lands you in the water, and the ramps basically just bring you down to drift speed when small. The ones on BC3, of course, can't be low tricked at all, unless you have a taste for lava, but you can instead trick onto the wall of the last platform for an easy, if modest, time save. You can technically even skip the fifth ramp entirely, but it really isn't worth the risk of falling short. If a shock hits near the end of the ramp section, you can pick up a more significant time save by riding the wall after the last ramp and cutting off the little patch of dirt. Just bear in mind, the respawn is horrible if you fall off here, so hop over the corner at your own risk. Incidentally, at normal size, that fifth ramp skip actually becomes consistent, and is in fact faster assuming you're not going for the tricky fourth low. The final tiny strategy I wanted to investigate was that of jumping off the bridge on DK Mountain, which can indeed save time, about a second in the best case, but with much deviation from that best case, the time save is pretty quickly nullified. To begin, notice that even in this best case scenario, the respawn wasn't the fastest way to reach the finish line, so it's seemingly never worth jumping off on lap 3. Besides that, the timing is pretty sensitive. Getting shocked a couple of bike lengths farther back is all it takes to make hopping off slower. If you're wondering why I wait so long to wheelie, by the way, it's because at low speeds, wheelies actually slow you down. The latest, then, that a shock can happen to have the respawn still be worth considering is a little over a third of the way across. As you may have noticed, in all these tests, stopping and charging an SSMT always turned out faster than continuing forward as normal. So in any borderline situation, you probably can't go too wrong doing that. Even getting shocked in 11th, the standstill remains a time saver. The bridge bounces are just that bad, regardless of when you resize. Obviously though, resize timing does matter for whether or not the respawn is faster. It seems that 5th place in a 12-player room, or 3rd in a 10-player one, are about the lowest spots in which taking the plunge has any chance of being optimal. I was curious if jumping off to avoid a blue could be faster as well, and as a matter of fact, it can, though the margins are narrower than with the shock. Of course, online there are also more factors to consider than just what's theoretically fastest, so really don't take any of this as gospel. And on that note, that near about covers all the strategies unique to being shrunk that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are still more out there that didn't even cross my mind, but this already was certainly more than I expected going in. So hopefully you found this info dump as interesting as I did, and thanks for watching.